Well, hello, friends, and welcome to the Real Secrets of Magic podcast. I'm your host, Brandon, and on today's program, I'm thrilled to have my friend, Rockell Bartoli, who is a speaker, an author, and a scholarship coach for high school students who are seeking a way into college. Rockell, or can I call you Rocky on the show?
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining me. I've been looking forward to having this chat for a little while now. I'm so glad you could carve out the time.
Yes, and thank you for having me. I'm excited to connect with you and to answer your questions and bring any value that we can to your listeners.
And I love that you start right off the bat talking about value. That's the name of the game on this show. And for those who are new to the program, you may have come here hoping to learn about magic tricks or illusions or sleight of hand. And while I love talking about all of those things, that's actually not the purpose of this show. So the real secrets of magic are really about the practices that magic makers are using to create new possibilities. And Rockell, I know you from through some of the work that we've shared together, but would you mind sharing a little bit for the listeners and viewers? Tell us a bit about the magic that you get to make on a regular basis with your clients.
Right. So I like that you position it as magic. Because when you're doing the work, sometimes it doesn't feel like magic, especially when things don't work out the way that you expect it to. But then when you get to see the fruit of your labor, then it does feel like magic, like it feels great. And so all of my work, my heart work, like the center of my heart and the things that I do is working with students. I do a lot of work with first generation students, high school students, college students. And my goal in my work is to help students to realize their potential, to tap into that potential, and to develop the habits that they need to succeed in school, in work, and life. And so when I work with students, I'm not just thinking about their right now, I'm thinking about when they buy their first home, when they get married, when they have kids, when they decide to switch careers. And so a lot of that is just helping them get through the hurdles that they're facing now and keeping them focused on their vision. So whether that's, I want to go to college, but I can't afford it. Okay, let's look at scholarships. Let's look at, those financially savvy habits that you need to develop, or not feeling like you're good enough, or feeling like things are getting too tough. And just sometimes it's really little things that students probably have heard before, but I know in my work with students, you have to be repetitive and the message has to hit them at the right time in order for it to make sense. So I get to do that as a high school guidance counselor, as a professional speaker, as a scholarship coach. And yeah, I really enjoy working with students.
It's fantastic, the stuff that you do, and I resonate with the magic that you're making as it pertains to building communities and building a better world. I think the greatest resource we have to do so are the people within it, and you're in the business of developing students into their fullest potential. If there's anything more magical than that, show me what it is. That feels like really important work for sure. And you've already addressed a couple of things right off the top, but I love that you mentioned the habits piece. And of course, that's the title of your first book, Success Habits.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about the book and what are some of the habits you think students, maybe they hear about all the time, but regularly ignore or overlook?
Yeah, definitely. So I think most people know that your habits play a major role in becoming a better version of yourself, reaching your goals, etc. And it's just being, repetitive about the good things more than the bad things. I try to boil it down as simple as that. And so when it comes to working with students, just having good habits on social media is something, number one, you have to bring to their attention. And number two, constantly talk about, your brand and how you show up on social media and, being careful of the things that you post and share, etc., especially if you're on track to go to college, get scholarships, internships, and even if you're just looking for a job, knowing that people are watching you. So that's something that, seems very basic, but students have to be taught what are the best habits when it comes to social media. Habits just like with time management. Like I know for myself, when I get on the computer, if I have way too many tabs open, like I'm just all over the place. And so the distractions, what distracts you? Is it your phone? Is it having the additional tabs? Especially right now with the pandemic and a lot of students doing school virtually, even my own son who's in the 4th grade, I've had to have the conversation with him that you cannot pull up YouTube on the side while you're in class. Even if you think that you're done, okay, we just don't do that. So, just those basic things, whether it's your distractions when it comes to school, stepping outside of your comfort zone, taking advantage of opportunities, utilizing your resources so you don't feel like you're doing life by yourself. And in my presentations, I always remind students that no one who is successful ever got to that destination or continues that destination on their own. You usually have a community or people to support you. So use what you have so it takes less time to get to where you want to go. So yeah, so those are some of the basic habits and principles that we need to hear over and over again and continue to develop each and every day.
Yeah, that's totally, myself included. Of course, right? It's like
Right.
the
Even
human
me.
machine. We're inundated with distractions and more of them all the time. And building the self-awareness to know, I think for me, even to have the light bulb go off in the back of my mind and say, you're distracted right now. This isn't what
Right.
you're meant to be doing, and catch myself and like, oh, whoop, sort of shake myself back to reality. What an effective tool or important tool, even if I don't use it all the time. You did mention right off the top that you like that I call it magic, but it doesn't always feel like magic in the moment when you're doing the work. And I think that's so poignant because as a conjurer, as a performance artist, I know that I could perform a 6-minute routine with cards that
Right.
feels really magical in the moment with the audience, but it's also taken me a year or 2 years or longer to put in the practice to make that 6 minutes feel magical. And this is one of the things I try to impress on people through this program, is that we're all capable of magic, but it's not the magic that we think. It's not like we can snap our fingers and suddenly make all these changes. It has to come from regular practice, leaning in
Right.
and building the right habits that feel super boring at the time, but amount to something much greater than they seem.
Exactly.
I'd love to know, where did you learn the importance of habits? Like, I know you're a bit about your own personal story, but can you tell us, how did you get from high school, let's say, to where you are now in the work that you're doing?
Great. So growing up as a first gen student, so mom didn't go to college, dad didn't go to college. No one really in my circle was in college. But I think for me, I was just intrinsically motivated. I knew based on my situation and my environment and what I was seeing that I wanted something better. So that got me to at least do my application and do the FAFSA, which was just horrendous back then. Like that was in itself was like a reason not to go to college, like that FAFSA form.
Sorry,
And-
for for those Canadian folks listening,
oh,
what's the form? A facile?
FAFSA, FAFSA. And so that's the financial aid form that we fill out in order for you to identify how much money the government is going to pay for you to go to college. So you fill
Okay.
that out, and sometimes you get all the money you need, and sometimes you get a little bit of money, and sometimes you get no money depending on how much your parents make. So luckily for me, my mother was broke as a joke, and I got a decent amount of FAFSA. I say that was the one time that it was cool to be broke, is when I started college. Yeah, because I got the money I needed to pay initially. I still ended up taking out student loans, but anyways, that's a whole nother story.
That's amazing.
And so, I dealt with challenges in college, but I think as I was making my way, and I'm really in tune with myself and self-awareness, and I take time to reflect. And so as I was making progress, I would look back and say, wow, I did that. I was able to do that. I was able to do that. And I think those things along the way gave me confirmation that if I continue to do things similar to you know, what I did for goal A and goal B and goal C. So it just became a part of my habits. Like, oh, it's just repetition. Like, it's not always the same thing, but if I keep doing this, then the odds are I am going to get that.
Mm.
So I think that's just kind of how it works. And it's very basic to understand. Like, a lot of repetitions of the right things will put you on the path to the things that you want to get. Will it always be perfect? No. Will you face challenges? Yes. That's why it's really important to be aware of what tools you have when the challenges come up. So whether it's my friends or people that support me, whether it's a YouTube station because I can't get through the math and I need additional help, but just be really, you know, aware of what you can use to support you as you're going along the way.
Brilliant advice. That having the self-awareness, like you already mentioned, but to know what's in your toolbox and know how to use it or when to use it are
Right.
two levels of awareness. And I wonder if that's, I mean, I feel like that's learned for a lot of people, that self-awareness. I don't know that everybody is born with this notion, and it sounds like you've had a lot of success in all through your journey and being able to apply these things and recognize, oh, when I did that, I achieved my goal, so I'm going to do
Right.
that again.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, is there a thing that you had to learn the hard way? Is there a habit or a practice that you wouldn't mind sharing with us that you didn't figure out until a little bit later on in your journey?
Yeah, so I guess the opposite end to that is learning that you can't do the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome. So I did that when I first started college and I struggled with math. And so I failed my math class more times than I would have liked to.
Mm,
And I realized that the habit there was continuing to do the same thing
mm,
and thinking like, okay, it's just going to go away or it's going to get better. So I had to switch my habits and actually show up at the math lab, actually get the tutoring, actually kind of get rid of this funky attitude I had towards what I was going through, and recognizing that when someone gives you advice or help, that you actually got to implement it. Maybe not
mm,
all the time, but if you want to see a change, you can't complain and cry to people like, oh, this is going on, you know, and then people are giving you advice or giving you resources, giving you support, you don't use it, and then you're right back in the same place. So
mm.
that was also like, you know, same thing with the habits. Like, I kept doing the same thing and it's like, okay, you're not moving anywhere. All right. And then I finally got frustrated and I said, okay, let me go do the things that these people have been telling me to do all this time. And I was like, okay, makes sense. So yeah, that was not fun, but I learned my lesson.
Fascinating too, right? It's like there's a sense of tension there because on one hand, success comes from doing things repeatedly over and over
Right.
again, leaning into them. But on the other hand, if you're not doing the right thing repeatedly and you don't know that you're not doing the right thing repeatedly, you don't know to change that thing.
Right.
And as you say, maybe people are screaming at you, no, change the thing. But we might be so steadfast to what our ego says is right or what we think we know that we're reluctant to change. Uh,
Right.
so, which maybe is a nice segue into your work with students, because I have a lot of experience working with high school students and some college students. I know you have tons of experience with high school students and college students and even younger maybe. And
Hmm.
if there's one group of people I know to be particularly resistant to advice, it's students. And you are not only giving advice, but you're helping students who face tremendous barriers, and you're helping them get into colleges and university programs and even discovering potential in themselves they didn't know was there. What do you do? Do you have an approach to working with students to help them see that the advice you have to offer is really valuable for them? Is there a way to help them get past their own mental barriers?
Well, I think for me, I bring a lot of authenticity to the table. And I'm really silly with my students. And when I speak to them, I speak to them from a place of encouragement And I speak to them from a place of like, I have to take a dose of my own medicine even today. So I always tell them, you know, whatever I'm sharing with you, it's not like a one and done type of thing. Even when I talk to you about self-care and I'm reminding you to take your self-care seriously, it's just a reflection to remind myself to take my self-care seriously. So I always let them know, like, what I'm speaking to you are those same things that I need reminders of, that I need to focus on, and no one's perfect, and that we're all a work in progress. So I think when they see that I'm coming from a place of relatability and I understand what you're going through and I share my failure plus my success and just remind them that we're all growing, then they're a little more receptive. And I'm also aware that when I work with students, like change happens over time. So even if we have this one encounter or a couple encounters, I might not see the fruit of my labor. For example, working in a high school, sometimes it's not until that ninth grader that I got 4 years ago is now a senior. And I'm like, you know, wow, you put me through a lot of work, but I'm so proud of you, you know? So it took like 4 years when this ninth grader came in, just rough and hardcore and doesn't want anybody to show any affection, doesn't want to do any work. And now you have this senior getting ready to graduate from high school. And so it took 4 years to get there. So I know that I'm just an additional layer of what that student or person needs, just like me. I've heard things a million times and I know how important it is and I know I need to categorize, but life gets busy. So the things I heard yesterday that are really important between yesterday and today, they've kind of moved down. And so I need to hear self-care again. Boom. Okay. So it's a reminder, I got to take care of my self-care. So, you know, students are even more like that. Like you told them something one day, they're motivated one day, by the next day, it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. So, you know, you just got to keep showing up for them and do the best you can.
That's great. It's a habit in itself, right? You're teaching students habits and living the habit of continuing to show up for students, reminding them of the
Right.
habits they need. It's habits all the way down. I love it.
Right.
I love it. What great practices and such important work as mentioned. Maybe I can ask you a little more pointed question about your newest venture. As I understand it, I know you're now you call yourself a scholarship coach.
Mhm.
Can you talk a bit about what's involved with that kind of work and yeah, where's the big value that you offer students there?
Right. So I'm the founder of the Scholar Budget. And so the Scholar Budget is basically there to help students to become more financially savvy sooner than later, and to help those who are interested to earn a degree with little to no debt. And so I myself am still paying on student loans, and it's the one thing that if I could go back in time and change, I would have done things very differently. And so through my work with students, I have created a system that helps students to effectively search for scholarships, apply for scholarships, and become consistent about it. And the way I see it is if a student starts in ninth grade and they continue applying every single year until they graduate from college, that's about 8 years. And if you're consistent, even if your goal is just to complete 5 scholarships a month, you are going to get something, which is money that you don't have to pay back, which is less student loans you have to take out, especially if the FAFSA or whatever other financial aid programs aren't going to help you to pay. So my goal is just to knock down one more barrier that students face when it comes to college, and also to help them develop financially savvy skills now versus later.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
wish you were around when I was a kid too, Rocky.
I
My
wish I
gosh.
was too.
I remember what I was going to say as you were talking about that and reflecting on the skills that I wish I had when I was younger. I know not
Mhm.
all of my listeners are, I have a few people who tune in and are students. We have a few students on that tune into the show. We have a few
Awesome.
educators that tune into the show, but we also have people that are not in the field of education and maybe aren't so interested in how to better engage students. But I think there's so much value in what you said about how you reach students by being authentic and by being on the same team, positioning yourself as somebody who's also growing with the lessons and not just having the lessons to divulge. there's something tremendously powerful in that for anybody who's trying to build a team or build a relationship
Right.
and better communicate. So what a model you are for us and for me
Yeah.
to learn how to better engage other people. And I want to wrap things up shortly, but there is one more question I want to ask, and it is, of
Yeah.
course, based off of the show, which is called The Real Secrets of Magic. I want to know, is there a secret practice that you have that maybe you don't talk about a lot, or that maybe if you told somebody it was related to your success, they might raise an eyebrow and wonder, like, huh, that you consider that to be a part of your recipe? Is there something that you do on a regular basis that you feel like has disproportionately contributed to your success now?
I think a bit of self-reflection and self-awareness. I think those two things
Mm,
have helped me tremendously, especially in those moments where like I want to win and I'm not winning, and whatever that looks like, whether it's in business or school or whatever it is. And so just remembering those times that I did win or things did go well, and then reevaluating what do I need to change, or do I just need to be patient? And so I talk to myself a lot, not out
mm,
loud, but you know, a lot of reflection, a lot of conversations,
mm.
you know, and yeah, so I think it's my self-awareness and my self-reflection, and that ripples across all areas of my life, even in my marriage, even with my kids. It's that constant self-reflection, like how can I become a better mother? Or if I screamed at one of my kids, I'm having a moment of evaluation, like, I could have done that differently. So tomorrow I'm going to have a conversation with them about XYZ. Or
Mm.
even when I'm working and evaluating my time, like, okay, last weekend I did a lot of work. This weekend I didn't need to be more intentional about my time with the kids. So, you know, and I'm really good about accountability. So if there's an area where I feel like I'm really not doing well in and I need the support, I will find someone to hold me accountable because I know that works for me. Someone like, hey, Rocky, you need to get this together, or you're doing too much of this. So I would say a bit of self reflection, self awareness, and accountability work really well for me.
They sound like really powerful strands, and it sounds like it shows up in a lot of different ways for you as a practice, and it's so maybe a part of you now that you probably don't have to think about it. It just happens for you. I don't. Maybe
No,
I'm
you're right.
making
Like, because
conclusions.
again, I'm always having these conversations. I could be driving and just, you know, I'm always in my head.
Me too. Me too. If you were to if somebody were wanted to build more self-reflection as a practice into their daily life to reap the benefits of, that constant accountability to yourself and being evaluative of your behaviors, your actions, and trying to improve, do you have any advice for somebody who isn't very reflective, but something they could do after hearing this podcast and implement right away?
Right. I think even if you don't want to journal, just writing things down. Like when things go well, write it down, especially the things that go well, because we're
Mm,
going to definitely have those moments when things don't go well. But then you go back to that journal, that book, whatever it is, and it's a reminder like, oh, on this date, this happened. On this date, this happened. And so just keeping note of your progress and your journey, whether it's through pictures, journal, going through your Facebook, or your social media, if you post events, and just taking time to look back so that it reminds you of why you keep going forward. So whatever media or platform that you can use, and again, you don't have to full out journal, but just make those dashes. You know, like I remember, I have a relationship with God, and I remember the moment when I was praying for my house. And now I have my house and I reflect and I'm like, man, I remember when I prayed for this house, or the moment when I was like praying about, having kids, et cetera, whether you call it prayer, manifestation, whatever the case is. And it's like, wow, like these are the things that several years ago I was like, oh my God, I can't wait. And now it's here. And so just, having that attitude of gratitude and looking back on the things that once upon a time I daydreamed about. And now it's like a reality. Like this is what I'm living. So yeah, just write it down, go through your social media, pictures. And yeah, I think that's the easiest way to start.
that's great. great advice. And I'd never really thought about using social media as a place to capture reflections. I mean, it is obviously that, but to be intentional about using Instagram to put some thoughts, maybe some innermost thoughts, maybe just to capture things in images. But that's a really neat shift for me to think about. And hopefully somebody listening to this will take up the charge and find a way to build more self-reflection, awareness, and accountability into their lives so that they can make some more magic.
Definitely.
Rocky, it's such a pleasure whenever I get the chance to chat with you, which is not enough, but thank you so much for carving out some time to be on the show. And I wish you all of the best as you continue to navigate your career as a speaker and coach. And I can't wait for the next book.
Awesome. Yeah, me too. That's a whole work in progress. But yeah, I feel like writing books are like having kids and giving birth. So we'll save that for the next podcast.
That's right. I'll have to have you back on. Thanks so much, Rocky. We'll talk to you next time.
Awesome. Thank you.